Off the coast of Africa, separated by 250 miles of turbulent ocean, lies an island that evolution forgot to share with the rest of the world. Madagascar, the fourth largest island on Earth, drifted away from the African continent 160 million years ago, taking with it a collection of life forms that would develop in complete isolation for eons. What emerged from this evolutionary laboratory defies every rule of nature we thought we understood. 80% of Madagascar's species exist nowhere else on our planet. Not in the Amazon, not in the Congo, not in any other corner of Earth. They are Madagascar's alone, creatures so bizarre and unique that scientists often struggle to classify them within known biological families. But here's what makes this story truly extraordinary. These aren't just variations of familiar animals with slight differences. These are beings that seem to have stepped out of an alien world, with adaptations so peculiar that they challenge our understanding of what life can become when left to its own devices for millions of years. In the shadows of Madagascar's ancient forests, predators hunt with techniques found nowhere else on Earth. Lemurs leap through the canopy, using calls that sound like whale songs. Tiny dragons change colors not just for camouflage, but to communicate complex emotions. And deep in the island's caves, creatures exist that seem to glow with their own inner light. Today, we're diving into the most isolated ecosystem on our planet, where evolution took a completely different path. By the end of this journey, you'll understand why Madagascar isn't just another tropical island, but rather a living museum of what life becomes when it has nowhere else to go but forward into the impossible. The story begins 160 million years ago, when Madagascar was still connected to the supercontinent Gondwana. As tectonic forces slowly tore the landmass apart, Madagascar found itself drifting eastward into the Indian Ocean, carrying with it a cargo of primitive mammals, reptiles, and plants. What happened next was one of the most remarkable experiments in natural history. Cut off from genetic exchange with the mainland, the island's inhabitants faced a choice: adapt to their new world, or perish. Those that survived didn't just adapt, they transformed into something entirely new. Without the competitive pressure from large African predators, without the influence of continental migration patterns, life on Madagascar was free to explore evolutionary pathways that would never have been possible anywhere else. The result is an island where the impossible became routine, where tiny primates developed the ability to survive winter by essentially hibernating like bears, where reptiles evolved to be smaller than your thumb, yet capable of complex social behaviors, where plants developed defensive strategies so unique that they seem to come from science fiction rather than natural selection. Madagascar's lemurs represent perhaps the most famous example of this evolutionary isolation, but they're just the beginning of the story. When early mammals first arrived on the island, they found themselves in a world without monkeys, without apes, without any of the primate competitors that dominated the African mainland. In this empty ecological niche, lemurs exploded into diversity, evolving into forms that filled roles typically occupied by completely different animal families. The ring-tailed lemur, perhaps Madagascar's most recognizable resident, developed a social structure more complex than most human societies. These creatures don't just live in groups. They operate sophisticated hierarchies where females rule absolutely, where scent marking becomes a complex language, and where territorial disputes are settled through elaborate stink fights that can last for hours. But the ring-tailed lemur is considered ordinary by Madagascar standards. Deep in the island's eastern rainforests lives the indri, a lemur that grows to the size of a small child and produces haunting songs that carry for miles through the forest canopy. These aren't simple calls or territorial warnings. The indri's songs are complex musical compositions with distinct melodies, harmonies, and rhythms that vary between family groups like cultural dialects. Scientists studying indri communication have discovered that these songs contain information about family relationships, territorial boundaries, emotional states, and even weather conditions. Each morning, Indri families perform elaborate duets that can last up to 4 minutes, with multiple family members contributing different vocal parts to create a symphony that resonates through the rainforest like a natural cathedral service. Even stranger is the ai, a lemur so bizarre that early explorers couldn't decide if it was a primate, a rodent, or something else entirely. The ai looks like nature's attempt to create a primate using spare parts from other animals. It has the teeth of a rodent, the ears of a bat, the tail of a squirrel, and a middle finger so elongated and specialized that it functions like a biological tool. This extraordinary finger isn't just for show. The ai uses it to tap on tree bark, listening for the hollow sounds that indicate insect larvae tunnels beneath the surface. Once it locates its prey, the ai gnaws through the bark with its ever-growing rodent teeth, then uses that specialized finger to fish out the larvae with surgical precision. It's a hunting technique found nowhere else in the primate world, evolved specifically for Madagascar's unique ecological conditions. But perhaps the most mysterious of Madagascar's lemurs is the recently discovered greater bamboo lemur, a species that shouldn't exist according to everything we know about primate nutrition. This lemur has evolved to survive almost exclusively on bamboo, despite the fact that bamboo contains cyanide compounds that should be lethal to mammals. Somehow, the greater bamboo lemur's digestive system has adapted to neutralize these toxins, allowing it to thrive on a diet that would kill most other animals. The discovery of this species sent shockwaves through the scientific community because it suggested that Madagascar's isolation had produced evolutionary adaptations that pushed the boundaries of what mammalian physiology could achieve. These weren't just behavioral adaptations or minor physical changes. These were fundamental alterations to basic biological processes. Moving beyond the lemurs, Madagascar's reptile diversity tells an even more extraordinary story of evolutionary creativity. The island hosts nearly 400 species of reptiles, with over 90% found nowhere else on Earth. But these aren't just endemic species, they're evolutionary experiments that seem to defy the basic rules of reptilian biology. Take the panther chameleon, a creature that turns color changing into high art. While most people think chameleons change colors for camouflage, the panther chameleon uses its color-changing ability primarily for communication. Males display brilliant patterns of red, blue, orange, and green that shift and pulse like living neon signs, with each color combination conveying specific messages about territorial claims, mating readiness, or aggressive intent. But color is just the beginning of the panther chameleon's arsenal of unusual adaptations. Their eyes operate independently, allowing them to watch for predators in one direction while hunting prey in another. Their tongues can extend to twice their body length and strike with the acceleration of a race car, generating forces that would be lethal if scaled up to human size. Even more bizarre are Madagascar's leaf-tailed geckos, reptiles that have mastered the art of disappearing in plain sight. These geckos don't just blend into their surroundings, they transform themselves into perfect replicas of dead leaves, complete with fake leaf veins, artificial holes that mimic insect damage, and even simulated decay patterns along their edges. The leaf-tailed gecko's camouflage is so sophisticated that researchers often walk past them repeatedly without detection. But when threatened, these geckos reveal another adaptation that seems borrowed from a horror movie. They can shed their tails, which continue to writhe and distract predators while the gecko escapes. More remarkably, they can also shed patches of their skin, leaving predators with nothing but a mouthful of scales while the gecko vanishes into the forest. At the other end of the size spectrum, Madagascar hosts some of the world's smallest reptiles, including recently discovered chameleons that are smaller than your thumbnail when fully grown. These micro-chameleons live in the leaf litter of Madagascar's forests, hunting prey so small they require microscopes to study their feeding behavior. Yet despite their tiny size, they retain all the complex adaptations of their larger relatives, including independently moving eyes, projectile tongues, and color-changing abilities. The existence of these miniature chameleons raises fascinating questions about the lower limits of vertebrate size and complexity. How small can a brain be and still coordinate the sophisticated behaviors these animals display? How do organs and systems that work perfectly at normal sizes continue to function when scaled down to such extreme dimensions? Madagascar's isolation has also produced plant species that seem to operate by their own biological rules. The island's flora includes trees that store water in their trunks like living reservoirs, flowers that bloom only at night and emit fragrances so intense they can be detected from miles away, and carnivorous plants that have evolved to trap and digest not just insects but small vertebrates as well. The octopus tree, despite its name, isn't actually related to octopi at all, but rather represents one of Madagascar's most unusual plant adaptations. This bizarre plant looks more like a living sculpture than a traditional tree, with thick, succulent branches that writhe and twist in patterns that seem almost deliberate. During the dry season, the octopus tree sheds its leaves and appears completely dead. But underground, its massive root system continues to function, storing water and nutrients for the coming rains. When the wet season arrives, the octopus tree transforms almost overnight, sprouting brilliant red flowers directly from its thick branches, in a display so dramatic that early botanists refused to believe it was a natural phenomenon. The flowers appear before any leaves, creating the surreal sight of a seemingly dead tree, suddenly blazing with color, like a botanical fireworks display. Even more extraordinary are Madagascar's baobab trees, giants that seem to grow upside down with their branches resembling massive root systems reaching toward the sky. Local legends claim these trees were planted by the gods in reverse, their roots stretching heavenward in a cosmic mistake that became permanent. But the reality is far more fascinating than any myth. These ancient sentinels can live for over 1,000 years, their enormous trunks swelling to store up to 32,000 gallons of water during Madagascar's brutal dry seasons. The baobab's trunk isn't just storage, it's a complete ecosystem. During droughts, elephants and other animals have learned to strip away the bark to access the life-giving water within. Yet the trees survive these assaults, regenerating their protective outer layers with remarkable resilience. But perhaps the most alien aspect of Madagascar's baobabs is their reproductive strategy. These trees can remain dormant for decades, showing no signs of sexual maturity, then suddenly explode into bloom during specific climatic conditions that scientists still don't fully understand. When they do flower, the blooms open only at night, releasing a fragrance so powerful it can attract pollinators from vast distances across the island. The flowers themselves are pollinated by Madagascar's flying foxes, massive bats with wingspans reaching 4 feet. These nocturnal giants navigate through the darkness, using echolocation so sophisticated they can distinguish between individual tree species from miles away. As they feed on the baobab nectar, pollen clings to their fur, creating a partnership between plant and animal that has existed for millions of years. Yet even these botanical marvels pale in comparison to Madagascar's most secretive inhabitants, creatures that emerge only when darkness falls across the island. In the limestone caves that honeycomb Madagascar's western regions, evolution has crafted animals so specialized for underground life that they seem to belong to an entirely different planet. The Madagascar cave fish represents one of the most extreme examples of evolutionary adaptation found anywhere on Earth. These fish have lived in complete darkness for so long that they've lost not just their eyesight, but their eyes entirely. Smooth skin covers the areas where eyes once existed, yet these fish navigate their underground world with precision that would be impossible for any surface-dwelling creature. Their lateral line system, a sensory organ that detects water movement and pressure changes, has evolved to such sensitivity that they can sense the heartbeat of other fish from several feet away. They hunt in absolute darkness by reading the water disturbances created by their prey, turning the cave pools into a 3-dimensional map of vibrations and currents that only they can interpret. But the cave fish aren't alone in their subterranean world. Madagascar's caves host an entire ecosystem of creatures that have never seen sunlight, including spiders that glow with bioluminescence, creating constellations of living light on the cave walls. These spiders don't just emit light randomly. They use their bioluminescence to communicate with potential mates, to warn competitors away from their territories, and even to confuse prey in the darkness. The glow isn't produced by the spiders themselves, but by symbiotic bacteria living within their bodies. This partnership between spider and bacteria represents yet another unique evolutionary solution, found only in Madagascar's isolated environment. The bacteria receive shelter and nutrients from their spider hosts, while the spiders gain the ability to produce light in a world where vision should be useless. Even more bizarre are the cave-dwelling lemurs, primates that have adapted to underground life in ways that challenge everything scientists thought they knew about primate behavior. These lemurs have developed echolocation abilities similar to bats, using clicks and calls to navigate through the cave systems. Their eyes haven't disappeared like the cave fish, but they've grown larger and more sensitive, capable of detecting the faintest traces of light that filter down from the surface world. During the day, these cave lemurs remain hidden in the deepest recesses of their underground homes, but at night they emerge to hunt for insects and small vertebrates in the cave entrances. They've developed a social structure completely different from their surface-dwelling relatives, living in smaller groups and communicating through touch and scent rather than the visual displays used by other lemur species. Above ground, Madagascar's night shift reveals creatures equally extraordinary. The fossa, Madagascar's largest predator, emerges from its daytime hiding places to hunt with techniques that seem borrowed from multiple animal families. Part cat, part mongoose, part something entirely unique. The fossa moves through the forest canopy with the agility of a primate, yet strikes with the power and precision of a big cat. The fossa's hunting strategy is unlike anything seen in other predators. It doesn't rely on speed or strength alone, but rather on an almost supernatural ability to predict the movements of its prey. Fossas have been observed following lemur troops for hours, learning their patterns and routines, then positioning themselves along routes the lemurs haven't even chosen yet. This predictive hunting behavior suggests a level of cognitive ability that scientists are only beginning to understand. The fossa's brain shows unusual development in regions associated with spatial reasoning and pattern recognition, adaptations that may have evolved specifically to hunt Madagascar's highly intelligent lemur populations. But the fossa's most unsettling characteristic is its scream, a sound that carries for miles through the Madagascar night and strikes terror into every creature that hears it. The call isn't just loud, it's complex, containing multiple frequency ranges that seem designed to disorient and confuse. Some researchers believe the fossa's scream actually interferes with the echolocation abilities of bats and the communication systems of lemurs, giving the predator a significant advantage in its nocturnal hunts. As we continue our journey through Madagascar's evolutionary wonderland, we encounter creatures that challenge our understanding of basic biological categories. The tenrec family represents one of the most diverse groups of mammals on the island, yet they're so varied that early scientists couldn't believe they were all related to each other. Some tenrecs look like hedgehogs, complete with defensive spines and the ability to roll into protective balls. Others resemble shrews with elongated snouts and hyperactive metabolisms that require them to eat almost constantly. Still others have evolved to fill the ecological niche of moles, developing powerful digging claws and reduced eyesight for underground life. But here's what makes the tenrec story truly extraordinary. Genetic analysis has revealed that all these diverse forms evolved from a single ancestor that arrived on Madagascar millions of years ago. In the absence of the mammals that fill these roles on other continents, tenrecs diversified to occupy every available niche, creating a family tree so complex that scientists are still mapping its branches. The streaked tenrec has developed one of the most unusual defensive mechanisms in the animal kingdom. When threatened, it raises specialized quills on its back and rubs them together to produce high-frequency sounds that can actually cause pain in the ears of potential predators. It's biological warfare through sound, a strategy that evolved nowhere else on Earth. Even more remarkable is the aquatic tenrec, a species that has independently evolved many of the same adaptations found in beavers and otters, despite being completely unrelated to either group. These tenrecs have waterproof fur, webbed feet, and the ability to hold their breath for extended periods while hunting for fish and aquatic invertebrates in Madagascar's rivers and streams. The existence of aquatic tenrecs demonstrates one of evolution's most fundamental principles. Given similar environmental challenges, unrelated species will often develop similar solutions. But Madagascar's isolation has allowed these convergent evolutionary processes to play out in ways that would never have been possible on a continent connected to larger landmasses. As dawn approaches over Madagascar's ancient landscape, the night shift retreats to hidden refuges, while an entirely different cast of characters prepares to take the stage. But the line between day and night inhabitants isn't as clear as it might seem. Many of Madagascar's creatures have evolved to occupy the liminal spaces between worlds, active during the twilight hours when the boundaries between different ecosystems blur and merge. The story of Madagascar's evolutionary isolation continues to unfold with each new scientific expedition, each DNA analysis, each behavioral study that reveals another layer of complexity in this island laboratory. What we've discovered so far represents only the beginning of understanding how life adapts when given millions of years to explore possibilities that exist nowhere else on Earth. Here on Ancient Dreams, we've only scratched the surface of Madagascar's biological mysteries. The deeper we venture into this evolutionary wonderland, the more we realize that Madagascar isn't just home to creatures found nowhere else on Earth. It's a window into alternative evolutionary pathways, a glimpse of what life becomes when isolation forces innovation at every level of existence. In the misty highlands of Madagascar's central plateau, where morning fog clings to volcanic peaks like ancient spirits, lives a creature that embodies the island's evolutionary defiance of natural law. The Madagascar hissing cockroach isn't just the world's largest cockroach. It's a living contradiction that challenges everything we think we know about insect behavior. These giants can grow to the size of a human palm, yet unlike their pest relatives found in human dwellings worldwide, Madagascar hissing cockroaches have evolved into sophisticated social creatures with complex hierarchies and communication systems. When threatened or establishing dominance, they force air through specialized breathing holes to produce hissing sounds so loud they can be heard from across a room. But the hissing is just the beginning of their remarkable adaptations. Males engage in ritualized combat that resembles miniature sumo wrestling matches, using horn-like projections on their heads to flip rivals onto their backs. The victorious male doesn't just win territory. He gains access to an intricate social network where females choose mates based on the quality and frequency of their hissing displays. These cockroaches live for up to 5 years, an extraordinary lifespan for insects, and during that time, they develop individual personalities and recognition abilities that rival those found in vertebrates. Researchers studying their behavior have documented that individual cockroaches can remember and respond differently to specific human handlers, suggesting cognitive abilities that shouldn't exist in creatures with brains smaller than rice grains. Perhaps even more extraordinary are Madagascar's carnivorous plants, botanical predators that have evolved hunting strategies so sophisticated they seem to possess intelligence. The Madagascar pitcher plant doesn't simply wait for insects to fall into its deadly pools. It actively lures prey using a combination of visual, chemical, and even electrical signals that create an irresistible trap for unwary creatures. The rim of each pitcher is coated with a waxy substance that becomes slippery when moistened by morning dew. But the plant doesn't rely on accident alone. It produces nectar that contains mild narcotic compounds, causing insects to become increasingly disoriented and clumsy as they feed. The more they drink, the more likely they become to slip into the digestive chamber below. Inside the picture, the plant maintains a carefully balanced ecosystem of digestive enzymes and specialized bacteria that break down captured prey with ruthless efficiency. But here's where Madagascar's isolation has produced something truly unique. The pitcher plant has evolved a mutualistic relationship with certain spider species that live within the pitchers without being digested. These spiders feed on smaller insects that fall into the traps, while their waste products provide additional nutrients for the plant. In return, the plant provides the spiders with shelter and a steady food supply. It's a partnership so intricate and specialized that the spider species involved are found nowhere else on Earth, having co-evolved with their plant hosts for millions of years. The botanical wonders of Madagascar extend beyond carnivorous species into realm of the truly bizarre. The traveler's palm, despite its name, isn't actually a palm at all, but rather a massive relative of the bird of paradise plant that has evolved to store hundreds of gallons of fresh water in the base of its fan-shaped leaves. Early explorers named it the traveler's palm because lost wanderers could tap into these natural reservoirs for drinking water. But the plant's water storage system serves a far more complex purpose. During Madagascar's punishing dry seasons, the traveler's palm becomes a crucial water source for the island's wildlife, from tiny insects to large mammals. The plant times its water release to coincide with the needs of its pollinators, creating temporary pools that attract the specific bird and bat species responsible for its reproduction. This isn't passive water storage. It's an active ecological engineering project that transforms the surrounding environment to benefit both the plant and the creatures that depend on it. But perhaps the most alien inhabitants of Madagascar are found in its coral reefs, underwater worlds that rival the terrestrial ecosystems in their bizarre creativity. The Mozambique Channel, the body of water separating Madagascar from the African mainland, has become an evolutionary laboratory for marine life every bit as isolated and unique as the island's terrestrial species. Here lives the Madagascar rainbow fish, a species that has evolved the ability to change not just its colors, but the actual structure of its scales in response to different social situations. During mating displays, males can alter their scale patterns to create optical illusions that make them appear larger, more colorful, or even partially transparent. The fish achieve this remarkable transformation through specialized cells called iridophores that contain microscopic plates of crystalline material. By adjusting the spacing and orientation of these plates, the fish can manipulate how light reflects off their bodies, creating visual effects that seem more like advanced technology than biological adaptation. Even more extraordinary are the Madagascar ghost pipefish, creatures so ethereal and otherworldly that they seem to exist in a realm between the living and the spectral. These fish have evolved elaborate fin extensions that mimic floating seaweed, allowing them to drift motionless in the current while remaining virtually invisible to both predators and prey. But their camouflage isn't static. The ghost pipefish can alter the transparency of their fins in real time, fading from solid to nearly invisible as conditions change around them. When threatened, they can become so translucent that only their eyes remain visible, creating the unsettling impression of disembodied consciousness floating in the water. The reproductive behavior of these phantom fish defies conventional understanding of marine biology. Males carry the eggs in specialized brood pouches, but unlike their seahorse relatives, Madagascar ghost pipefish males can transfer developing embryos between multiple females during the breeding season, creating complex family structures that scientists are only beginning to unravel. In the deeper waters surrounding Madagascar, creatures exist that push the boundaries of what we consider possible in marine environments. The Madagascar coelacanth, a fish that was supposed to have gone extinct 66 million years ago, continues to thrive in the island's deep coastal waters, representing a living link to prehistoric oceans. But Madagascar's coelacanths aren't just surviving fossils, they're active participants in one of the ocean's most complex ecosystems. These ancient fish have evolved sophisticated social behaviors, including cooperative hunting strategies and what appears to be teaching behavior between adults and juveniles. Recent underwater observations have revealed that adult coelacanths lead younger individuals to specific feeding areas, demonstrating hunting techniques and even sharing prey in ways that suggest cultural transmission of knowledge. The idea that fish might possess culture was controversial enough when discovered in other species, but finding it in a creature virtually unchanged for hundreds of millions of years challenges our understanding of how intelligence and learning evolve. The coelacanth's continued existence in Madagascar's waters also reveals another layer of the island's biological mystery. These fish require very specific environmental conditions to survive, including deep, stable temperatures and particular chemical compositions in the water. The fact that Madagascar's marine environment has remained suitable for such ancient and specialized creatures suggests that the island's isolation has preserved not just terrestrial ecosystems, but entire oceanic habitats that have vanished elsewhere on Earth. Beneath the coral reefs, in underwater caves that honeycomb Madagascar's coastal regions, evolution has crafted creatures that exist in permanent twilight. Here lives the Madagascar blind cave shrimp, crustaceans that have not only lost their eyesight, but have developed sensory abilities that border on the supernatural. These ghostly shrimp navigate their dark world using modified antennae that can detect chemical gradients so subtle they can follow the trail of a single molecule through the water. They hunt by taste and touch alone, yet their success rate in capturing prey exceeds that of many sighted predators in well-lit environments. The cave shrimp have also evolved one of the most unusual reproductive strategies in the crustacean world. Females can store sperm from multiple males for months, selectively fertilizing eggs based on environmental conditions and resource availability. During times of abundance, they produce large numbers of offspring, but during lean periods, they can delay reproduction indefinitely, waiting for conditions to improve. This reproductive flexibility allows the cave shrimp populations to survive in an environment where food sources are unpredictable and often separated by vast distances. It's another example of how Madagascar's isolation has forced species to develop solutions to survival challenges that simply don't exist in more connected ecosystems. Above the cave systems, Madagascar's coral reefs host their own collection of evolutionary marvels. The Madagascar leaf scorpionfish has perfected the art of aggressive mimicry, disguising itself not as harmless debris like most camouflaged predators, but as something actively beneficial to its prey. This remarkable fish has evolved to mimic cleaning stations, areas where small fish gather to have parasites removed by cleaner species. The scorpionfish positions itself among genuine cleaning stations, moving and behaving exactly like the beneficial cleaner fish that small reef fish seek out for grooming services. When unsuspecting prey approaches for what they believe will be a helpful cleaning session, the scorpionfish strikes with lightning speed, swallowing its victim whole. It's deception taken to an art form, requiring not just physical mimicry, but behavioral adaptation so precise that it fools creatures that have evolved alongside genuine cleaning stations for millions of years. The scorpionfish's hunting strategy represents one of the most sophisticated examples of aggressive mimicry known to science, requiring the predator to suppress its natural hunting instincts and instead behave like an entirely different species. The neural adaptations necessary for this behavioral flexibility suggest cognitive abilities in fish that challenge traditional assumptions about vertebrate intelligence. As we venture deeper into Madagascar's marine mysteries, we encounter creatures that seem to blur the line between plant and animal, between individual and collective organism. The Madagascar zoanthid colonies create living carpets across the reef surfaces, but each colony isn't just a collection of individual polyps. It's a superorganism with emergent properties that exceed the sum of its parts. These colonial creatures can coordinate their feeding behavior across hundreds of individuals, creating wave-like patterns of tentacle movement that generate currents to concentrate plankton and small organisms. When threatened, the entire colony can respond instantaneously, with polyps on one side of the formation reacting to stimuli detected by individuals hundreds of feet away. The coordination mechanisms that allow such rapid communication across the colony remain largely mysterious. There's no central nervous system, no obvious communication network, yet the colony responds to environmental changes with the precision of a single, complex organism. Recent research has suggested that the zoanthids may be using chemical signals that travel through the colony's shared tissue matrix, creating a form of biological internet that allows information to spread faster than nerve impulses could travel over such distances. If confirmed, this would represent an entirely novel form of biological communication, another unique solution evolved in Madagascar's isolated marine environment. Here on Ancient Dreams, we've explored ecosystems that exist nowhere else on our planet, creatures that challenge every assumption about what life can become when given millions of years to experiment without interference. But Madagascar's story is far from over. Each new expedition, each advance in genetic analysis, each breakthrough in understanding animal behavior reveals new layers of complexity in this evolutionary laboratory. The island's isolation has created not just unique species, but entirely unique approaches to the fundamental challenges of survival, reproduction, and adaptation. From the highlands to the coral reefs, from the ancient forests to the underground rivers, Madagascar continues to demonstrate that evolution's creativity knows no bounds when given the freedom to explore possibilities that exist nowhere else on Earth. The creatures we've encountered represent just a fraction of Madagascar's biological diversity, yet they reveal a pattern that extends far beyond any single species or habitat. This is an island where evolution has been free to experiment with solutions that would never survive in more competitive, connected environments. The result is a living museum of alternative evolutionary pathways, a glimpse into what life becomes when isolation forces innovation at every level of existence. Yet even as we celebrate these evolutionary marvels, we must confront a sobering reality. Madagascar's isolation, the very force that created its biological treasures, also makes these creatures extraordinarily vulnerable to change. Species that have evolved over millions of years in stable, isolated conditions often cannot adapt quickly enough to survive rapid environmental shifts or the introduction of foreign competitors. Human activity has accelerated the pace of change on Madagascar, far beyond anything these evolutionary experiments have ever faced. Deforestation, climate change, and the introduction of invasive species threaten ecosystems that have remained stable for geological ages. Many of the creatures we've explored exist in populations so small and specialized that the loss of even a single habitat could drive them to extinction. The Madagascar elephant bird, once the largest bird on Earth, fell victim to human arrival on the island just a few centuries ago. The recently extinct Madagascar hippopotamus succumbed to habitat loss and hunting pressure. These losses represent not just individual species extinctions, but the disappearance of entire evolutionary experiments that can never be replicated. Today, conservation efforts on Madagascar face challenges unlike those found anywhere else on Earth. Protecting these unique species isn't just about preserving individual animals or plants, it's about maintaining the ecological conditions that allow evolutionary processes to continue operating in ways found nowhere else on our planet. The lessons of Madagascar extend far beyond the island itself. In our increasingly connected world, true biological isolation is becoming impossible to maintain. The forces that created Madagascar's evolutionary laboratory, millions of years of separation from continental influences, cannot be recreated in the modern world. This makes Madagascar not just a repository of unique life forms, but a window into evolutionary processes that may never occur again on our planet. The island's creatures represent the last examples of what happens when life is given complete freedom to explore biological possibilities without external interference. In the dense rainforests of Andasibemantadia, where mist rises from the canopy like incense from some primordial temple, lives a creature that embodies Madagascar's most profound evolutionary mystery. The Madagascar hissing cockroach might seem like an unlikely subject for wonder, yet this insect challenges every assumption we hold about the limits of invertebrate intelligence and social complexity. Growing to the size of a computer mouse, these giants of the insect world have evolved behaviors that blur the line between instinct and cognition. When males compete for territory, they engage in elaborate wrestling matches that follow rules so consistent they appear to be governed by an insect code of honor. The victor doesn't simply drive away his opponent. He performs a ritualized hissing display that seems designed to establish dominance without causing permanent harm. But here's where the story becomes truly extraordinary. Researchers studying these cockroaches in laboratory conditions have discovered that individuals can recognize and remember specific opponents for months after a confrontation. They adjust their fighting strategies based on past encounters, showing more aggression toward rivals they've defeated and more caution around those who have bested them in previous battles. This kind of individual recognition and strategic thinking was once thought to be exclusive to vertebrates with complex nervous systems. Yet here, in an insect with a brain smaller than a pinhead, we find evidence of memory, learning, and decision-making that rivals behaviors seen in much larger animals. The cockroaches communicate through a sophisticated array of chemical signals, with each individual producing a unique scent signature that conveys information about age, reproductive status, health, and even recent experiences. Females can detect and interpret these chemical messages with such precision that they can assess the genetic quality of potential mates from across a forest clearing. During mating season, the chemical conversations become so complex that researchers describe them as insect poetry, with males composing elaborate scent symphonies to attract partners and females responding with their own chemical critiques of suitor quality. It's a level of communication sophistication that transforms our understanding of how information can be transmitted in the absence of human-like language. Moving from the forest floor to the canopy above, we encounter another of Madagascar's evolutionary masterpieces. The panther chameleon doesn't just change colors for camouflage or temperature regulation. It uses its chromatic abilities to create one of nature's most sophisticated visual communication systems. Each color change isn't random, but follows specific patterns that convey precise information. A rapid shift from green to orange signals territorial aggression, while a slow transition from brown to yellow indicates submission or retreat. But the chameleon's color vocabulary extends far beyond simple emotional states. Males can display complex patterns that include information about their size, age, fighting ability, and even their recent success in territorial disputes. Females interpret these visual messages with remarkable accuracy, often making mating decisions based on subtle color variations that human observers can barely detect. The neurological complexity required for this chromatic communication system challenges traditional assumptions about reptilian intelligence. The chameleon's brain must simultaneously process visual information from independently moving eyes, coordinate rapid color changes across thousands of specialized skin cells, and maintain awareness of social hierarchies and territorial boundaries. Recent studies using advanced brain imaging techniques have revealed that panther chameleons possess neural structures remarkably similar to those found in birds and mammals, suggesting that complex cognitive abilities may have evolved independently in Madagascar's isolated environment. The chameleon's brain shows heightened activity in regions associated with pattern recognition, spatial memory, and social awareness, capabilities that rival those found in much more advanced vertebrates. But perhaps the most alien aspect of the panther chameleon's biology is its ability to see ultraviolet light patterns invisible to human eyes. Their world is painted with colors and contrasts that exist beyond our perception, creating a visual landscape so different from our own that we can barely imagine what their reality looks like. This UV vision isn't just a curiosity, it's central to their survival strategy. Many of Madagascar's flowers reflect ultraviolet light in patterns that guide chameleons to nectar sources, while potential prey species often have UV markings that make them visible against backgrounds where they would otherwise be perfectly camouflaged. The chameleon's tongue, capable of accelerating faster than a fighter jet and striking with the force of a small bullet, is guided by this enhanced visual system with targeting accuracy that seems almost supernatural. they can calculate distance, trajectory, and timing with such precision that they rarely miss their mark, even when striking at flying insects from impossible angles. Deep in Madagascar's limestone caves, evolution has crafted creatures that exist in a realm of perpetual darkness, yet their adaptations to this lightless world reveal sensory abilities that border on the miraculous. The Madagascar cave cricket has lost its eyes entirely, but in exchange has developed acoustic abilities that allow it to navigate through sound with greater precision than most sighted animals achieve through vision. These crickets produce ultrasonic calls so sophisticated that they can map the three-dimensional structure of their cave environment in real time. They bounce sound waves off cave walls, stalactites, and even other crickets to create detailed acoustic maps of their surroundings. But this isn't simple echolocation like that used by bats. The cricket's acoustic system can distinguish between different types of rock formations, identify the moisture content of cave walls, and even detect the emotional states of other crickets based on subtle variations in their return calls. They live in a world constructed entirely of sound, where every surface, every movement, every living creature creates its own acoustic signature. When these crickets hunt, they use their sound mapping abilities to predict the movements of their prey with uncanny accuracy. They can determine not just where a potential meal is located, but where it's likely to move next, allowing them to position themselves for strikes that appear almost psychic in their precision. The cave crickets have also evolved one of the most unusual reproductive strategies in the insect world. Males create acoustic territories using specific frequencies that other males cannot replicate, essentially claiming ownership of particular sound wavelengths within the cave ecosystem. Females choose mates based not just on the quality of their calls, but on the acoustic real estate they control. These sound territories can be inherited, passed down from father to son through a process that scientists are only beginning to understand. Young males learn their father's acoustic signature and gradually modify it to create their own unique frequency range, establishing a form of cultural transmission that was previously unknown in invertebrates. Above ground, in Madagascar's remaining fragments of spiny forest, another evolutionary experiment unfolds in the form of the octopus tree. This bizarre plant looks more like a living sculpture than a traditional tree, with thick, succulent branches that writhe and twist in patterns that seem almost deliberate. But the octopus tree's most remarkable adaptation isn't visible until the dry season arrives. As drought conditions intensify, the tree begins a transformation that defies botanical logic. It sheds every leaf, appearing to die completely, yet internally it's preparing for one of nature's most dramatic resurrection displays. The tree's massive trunk and branches store thousands of gallons of water, enough to survive months without rainfall. When conditions are perfect, usually triggered by subtle changes in atmospheric pressure that precede the rainy season, the octopus tree explodes into bloom. Brilliant red flowers emerge directly from its thick branches, creating a display so intense it can be seen from miles away. The timing is so precise that local people have used octopus tree blooming as a calendar for agricultural planning for centuries. But the tree's most extraordinary characteristic is its apparent ability to communicate with other octopus trees across vast distances. When one tree begins its blooming cycle, others in the region often follow within days, even if they're separated by dozens of miles and experience slightly different environmental conditions. Scientists studying this phenomenon have discovered that the trees may be responding to chemical signals carried by wind currents, creating a communication network that spans entire forest ecosystems. The trees appear to coordinate their blooming to maximize pollination success, timing their displays to coincide with the arrival of their specific pollinators. These pollinators, Madagascar's giant hawk moths, represent another marvel of coevolution. With tongues that can extend over a foot in length, these moths have evolved specifically to feed on the octopus tree's deep flowers. The relationship is so specialized that neither species can survive without the other, creating an evolutionary bond forged over millions of years of isolation. The hawk moths navigate through the darkness using a combination of scent detection and magnetic field sensing, that allows them to locate blooming octopus trees from extraordinary distances. During peak blooming season, individual moths may visit dozens of trees in a single night, carrying pollen across distances that connect isolated forest fragments and maintain genetic diversity in both species. Here on Ancient Dreams, we're witnessing the intricate web of relationships that make Madagascar's ecosystems function as integrated wholes rather than collections of individual species. Each creature, each plant, each seemingly simple interaction represents millions of years of co-evolutionary refinement, creating biological partnerships so specialized they exist nowhere else on Earth. In the shallow lagoons that fringe Madagascar's western coast, where freshwater rivers meet the Indian Ocean, evolution has produced aquatic creatures that challenge our understanding of the boundaries between freshwater and marine life. The Madagascar killifish has evolved the remarkable ability to switch between freshwater and saltwater physiology within hours, allowing it to exploit resources in both environments. This physiological flexibility requires rapid changes at the cellular level that were once thought impossible in vertebrates. The killifish can alter the permeability of its gill membranes, adjust the concentration of salt-handling proteins in its kidneys, and even modify the composition of its blood chemistry to match changing salinity levels. But the killifish's most extraordinary adaptation is its reproductive strategy. These fish can reproduce both sexually and asexually, depending on environmental conditions, switching between strategies to maximize their chances of survival in unpredictable habitats. During stable conditions, they reproduce sexually to maintain genetic diversity, but when facing environmental stress, females can produce genetic clones of themselves to ensure population survival. The ability to switch reproductive modes has allowed Madagascar killifish to colonize habitats that would be impossible for other fish species to survive in. They thrive in seasonal pools that dry completely during drought years, in brackish lagoons where salinity levels fluctuate wildly, and even in temporary water bodies created by cyclone flooding. When their habitats dry up, killifish eggs can survive in suspended animation for years, waiting for conditions to improve. The eggs are resistant to desiccation, temperature extremes, and even the digestive systems of animals that might accidentally consume them, allowing the species to disperse across Madagascar through means that seem almost magical. Recent genetic studies have revealed that Madagascar's killifish populations are far more diverse than their simple appearance suggests. What appears to be a single species is actually a complex of closely related forms, each specialized for specific microhabitats within the island's aquatic ecosystems. Some populations have evolved to live exclusively in cave pools, others in mountain streams, and still others in coastal mangrove swamps. This hidden diversity reflects a pattern found throughout Madagascar's fauna. The island's isolation has allowed rapid speciation to occur within small geographic areas, creating pockets of endemic diversity that would take millions of years to develop in more connected ecosystems. As we continue exploring Madagascar's biological treasures, we must confront the reality that many of these evolutionary experiments are disappearing before science has had a chance to study them fully. Recent surveys suggest that new species are being discovered on Madagascar at the same rate that others are going extinct, creating a race between scientific documentation and environmental destruction. The Madagascar serpent eagle, a raptor that has evolved to hunt in the island's dense forests using techniques found nowhere else among birds of prey, represents both the wonder and the fragility of Madagascar's evolutionary legacy. These eagles have developed the ability to hunt by sound alone, using their exceptional hearing to locate prey moving through the leaf litter far below the forest canopy. Unlike other eagles that rely primarily on vision for hunting, the Madagascar serpent eagle has evolved asymmetrical ear openings that allow it to pinpoint the location of sounds with radar-like precision. It can distinguish between the footsteps of different prey species, identifying potential meals by their unique acoustic signatures. The eagle's hunting strategy involves a form of aerial surveillance that seems almost supernatural. It soars silently above the canopy, using thermal currents to remain airborne without flapping, while its enhanced hearing maps the movement of creatures on the forest floor hundreds of feet below. When it detects suitable prey, the eagle can dive through dense vegetation with pinpoint accuracy, navigating between branches and leaves to strike targets it has never actually seen. This acoustic hunting ability has allowed the Madagascar serpent eagle to thrive in forest environments where visual hunting would be nearly impossible. The dense canopy blocks most sunlight from reaching the forest floor, creating conditions where even the sharpest eyesight would be of limited value. But the eagle's most remarkable adaptation may be its ability to learn and remember the acoustic patterns of individual forest territories. Experienced birds develop detailed sound maps of their hunting grounds, knowing exactly where different types of prey are likely to be found at different times of day and in different weather conditions. This acoustic mapping ability represents a form of environmental intelligence that challenges traditional assumptions about avian cognition. The eagles must process and remember vast amounts of acoustic information, creating mental maps of their territories that include not just physical features, but temporal patterns of animal activity. Yet despite their remarkable adaptations, Madagascar serpent eagles are disappearing as their forest habitats are converted to agriculture and human settlement. The acoustic hunting techniques that made them so successful in pristine forests become useless in degraded environments where the natural soundscape has been disrupted by human activity. The story of the Madagascar serpent eagle reflects a broader pattern affecting the island's endemic species. Creatures that evolved over millions of years to exploit specific ecological niches often cannot adapt quickly enough to survive rapid habitat changes. Their specialized adaptations, once sources of evolutionary advantage, become liabilities in a rapidly changing world. In the remote highlands of Madagascar's Ankaratra Mountains, where mist swirls through ancient volcanic peaks like ghostly fingers, evolution has crafted one of its most enigmatic masterpieces. The Madagascar moon moth exists in a realm where time seems suspended, where creatures move through darkness guided by sensory abilities that transcend ordinary perception. These ethereal giants, with wingspans reaching nearly a foot across, navigate the night using a form of chemical detection so sophisticated it borders on telepathy. A single molecule of pheromone can guide a male moth across dozens of miles of rugged terrain, through forest and over mountains, with navigational precision that would challenge our most advanced GPS systems. But the moon moth's most extraordinary ability isn't its chemical compass. During their brief adult lives, which last only days, these creatures can detect and interpret electromagnetic fields generated by other living organisms. They read the electrical signatures of flowers, trees, and even other insects, creating a sensory map of their world that exists entirely beyond human perception. When a female moon moth is ready to mate, she releases chemical signals so complex they contain information about her genetic lineage, her health status, and even the quality of the plants she consumed as a caterpillar. Males don't just detect these signals, they analyze them like biological chemists, making mating decisions based on molecular data that reveals the female's evolutionary fitness. The caterpillars of these remarkable moths have evolved their own set of impossible adaptations. They feed exclusively on plants that should be toxic to any insect, processing deadly alkaloids through specialized gut bacteria that exist nowhere else in nature. These bacterial symbionts don't just neutralize plant toxins, they convert them into defensive compounds that make the caterpillars poisonous to potential predators. The relationship between moth and bacteria represents millions of years of co-evolutionary refinement. The bacteria receive shelter and nutrients from their caterpillar hosts, while providing chemical services that allow the moths to exploit food sources unavailable to any other species. When the caterpillar pupates, it carefully preserves colonies of these essential bacteria, passing them on to the next generation through mechanisms that scientists are only beginning to understand. Deep beneath Madagascar's Tsingy de Bemaraha, in limestone caves carved by millions of years of underground rivers, lives a creature that has pushed the boundaries of a mammalian adaptation beyond anything previously thought possible. The Madagascar cave bat has evolved echolocation abilities so advanced they make other bats seem primitive by comparison. These ghostly creatures can generate ultrasonic calls with such precision that they can distinguish between individual insects in dense swarms, tracking dozens of potential prey simultaneously, while navigating through cave passages barely wider than their wingspans. But their acoustic abilities extend far beyond simple navigation and hunting. Cave bats have developed a form of social echolocation that allows entire colonies to share acoustic information in real time. When one bat discovers a rich feeding area, it can transmit the location to other colony members through specialized call patterns that function like biological radio broadcasts. The receiving bats don't just hear these signals, they can interpret detailed acoustic maps that guide them directly to food sources they've never visited. The neural processing required for this acoustic information sharing pushes the limits of what should be possible in a brain weighing less than a gram. These bats must simultaneously generate their own echolocation calls, process returning echoes from their environment, interpret social acoustic signals from other colony members, and coordinate their flight patterns to avoid collisions in crowded cave spaces. Recent neurological studies have revealed that Madagascar cave bats possess brain structures found nowhere else in the mammalian world. Specialized regions of their auditory cortex have evolved to process multiple streams of acoustic information simultaneously, creating what researchers describe as biological parallel processing systems that rival the complexity of advanced computers. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of their echolocation system is its ability to adapt and learn. Young bats don't inherit their acoustic abilities fully formed. Instead, they learn to echolocate through a process that resembles language acquisition in human children. They practice with simple calls, gradually building complexity as their neural pathways develop and mature. Adult bats can modify their echolocation signatures throughout their lives, developing personal acoustic fingerprints that allow colony members to identify specific individuals by their calls alone. This individual recognition system enables complex social behaviors, including cooperative hunting strategies and information-sharing networks that span entire cave systems. In the coastal waters surrounding Nosy Be, Madagascar's largest offshore island, evolution has produced marine creatures that seem to exist in a realm between reality and dream. The Madagascar ghost ray glides through underwater gardens of coral and seagrass like a living shadow, its translucent body barely disturbing the water as it moves. These ethereal creatures have evolved transparency to such an extraordinary degree that their internal organs are visible through their skin, creating the unsettling impression of animated anatomy floating through the water. But their translucency isn't just camouflage, it's an active hunting strategy that allows them to become virtually invisible to both predators and prey. The ghost ray's transparency is controlled by specialized cells that can adjust the opacity of different body regions independently. When hunting, the ray can make its digestive system completely transparent, while keeping its brain and sensory organs visible, creating optical illusions that confuse potential prey about the ray's size, shape, and intentions. Their hunting technique defies conventional understanding of predatory behavior. Rather than pursuing prey actively, ghost rays position themselves in areas where small fish are likely to swim, then use controlled transparency changes to create visual distortions in the water. Fish swimming toward what appears to be empty water suddenly find themselves inside the ray's mouth, having been deceived by optical effects that seem more like magic than biology. The reproductive behavior of these phantom hunters is equally extraordinary. Males compete for mates not through physical combat, but through displays of transparency control that demonstrate their genetic fitness. The most successful males can create complex patterns of opacity and translucency that ripple across their bodies like living artwork. Females evaluate potential mates based on the sophistication of these transparency displays, choosing partners whose optical abilities suggest superior genes for camouflage and hunting. The mating process itself involves synchronized transparency changes between partners, creating underwater light shows that can be seen by other rays from considerable distances. Madagascar's ghost rays also possess one of the most unusual sensory adaptations found in any cartilaginous fish. They can detect the electromagnetic fields generated by the nervous systems of other creatures, essentially reading the thoughts and emotions of nearby animals. This electrical sense allows them to locate hidden prey, avoid predators, and even assess the intentions of other rays during social interactions. The electroreceptive abilities of these creatures are so sensitive, they can detect the neural activity of small fish from several meters away, even when the prey is buried in sand or hidden among coral formations. This biological radar system operates continuously, creating a three-dimensional map of electrical activity that extends far beyond the ray's visual range. On the terrestrial front, in Madagascar's remaining patches of dry deciduous forest, another evolutionary marvel demonstrates the incredible adaptability that isolation can foster. The Madagascar plowshare tortoise has evolved shell modifications so specific to its environment that they function like biological tools designed for a single purpose. The tortoise's shell features a pronounced forward projection that gives the species its name, but this isn't just an ornamental feature. The plowshare structure allows these tortoises to dig specialized burrows in Madagascar's hard-packed soil, creating underground chambers that maintain stable temperatures and humidity levels throughout the island's extreme seasonal variations. But the tortoise's most remarkable adaptation is its ability to enter a state of metabolic suspension that resembles hibernation in mammals. During Madagascar's harshest dry seasons, when temperatures soar and food becomes scarce, plowshare tortoises can slow their metabolism to nearly undetectable levels, surviving for months without food or water. This dormancy isn't simple inactivity. The tortoises coordinate their metabolic shutdown with seasonal changes in ways that suggest internal biological calendars of extraordinary precision. They begin preparing for dormancy weeks before environmental conditions actually require it, gradually adjusting their physiology to optimize survival during the coming harsh season. During dormancy, the tortoises' bodies undergo remarkable changes that challenge our understanding of reptilian physiology. Their heart rates drop to barely measurable levels, their digestive systems essentially shut down, and their immune systems enter a state of suspended animation that somehow prevents disease and infection during months of inactivity. When environmental conditions improve, the tortoises can emerge from dormancy within hours, rapidly returning to normal metabolic function with no apparent ill effects from their extended metabolic vacation. This ability to essentially pause their biological clocks allows them to survive in environments that would be lethal to most other reptiles. The plowshare tortoise's shell also serves another function that scientists have only recently discovered. The shell's internal structure includes chambers that function as resonating cavities, allowing the tortoises to produce low-frequency calls that can travel for miles across the dry forest landscape. These calls aren't just simple mating signals. They're complex communications that convey information about territory boundaries, resource locations, and individual identity. Males engage in acoustic duels during breeding season, using their shell-amplified calls to establish dominance without the need for physical confrontation. The tortoise with the most sophisticated vocal repertoire and the strongest shell acoustics typically wins access to the best territories and mates, creating evolutionary pressure for both vocal ability and shell architecture. Here on Ancient Dreams, we're witnessing how Madagascar's isolation has allowed evolution to explore solutions that exist nowhere else on our planet. Each species represents millions of years of experimentation, refinement, and adaptation to conditions found only on this remarkable island. In the canopy of Madagascar's eastern rainforests, where morning mist creates cathedral-like columns of filtered sunlight, lives a primate that embodies the island's capacity for evolutionary surprise. The golden bamboo lemur exists on a diet that should kill it, thriving on bamboo shoots that contain cyanide levels high enough to poison most mammals within hours of consumption. These remarkable primates have evolved digestive systems capable of processing toxins that would be lethal to their closest relatives. Their stomachs produce specialized enzymes that break down cyanide compounds before they can enter the bloodstream, while their livers contain backup detoxification systems that provide additional protection against poisoning. But the golden bamboo lemur's adaptation to toxic food sources goes beyond simple poison resistance. They've developed behavioral strategies that maximize nutrition while minimizing toxin exposure, carefully selecting bamboo shoots at specific growth stages when nutritional content is highest and toxic compounds are at more manageable levels. The lemurs possess an almost supernatural ability to assess the chemical composition of potential food sources through scent alone. They can detect minute variations in bamboo chemistry that indicate whether a particular shoot is safe to eat, allowing them to make life or death decisions based on olfactory information invisible to other species. During peak bamboo growth seasons, golden bamboo lemurs consume up to 12 times the amount of cyanide that would kill a human, yet they show no signs of toxicity or health problems. Their bodies have essentially become biological processing plants, capable of extracting nutrition from one of nature's most chemically defended food sources. The social structure of these toxin-adapted primates reflects their unique dietary constraints. Groups must coordinate their foraging activities to ensure that prime bamboo resources are harvested at optimal times, leading to complex scheduling behaviors that resemble agricultural planning more than typical primate foraging. Mothers teaching young lemurs which bamboo to eat and when to eat it engage in educational behaviors that suggest cultural transmission of survival knowledge. Young lemurs don't automatically know which bamboo is safe. They must learn through observation and practice, gradually building tolerance to toxins as their digestive systems mature. In Madagascar's northern highlands, where ancient volcanic activity has created landscapes that seem borrowed from alien worlds, another evolutionary experiment unfolds in the form of the Madagascar fire coral. Despite its name, this isn't actually coral at all, but rather a colonial organism that has evolved to create structures remarkably similar to coral reefs in terrestrial environments. These extraordinary organisms build calcium carbonate frameworks in freshwater mountain streams, creating underwater gardens that provide habitat for dozens of endemic aquatic species. The fire coral colonies can live for centuries, gradually constructing limestone formations that alter entire stream ecosystems. But the most remarkable aspect of Madagascar fire coral is its ability to control water chemistry around its colonies. The organisms actively adjust pH levels and mineral concentrations in the surrounding water, creating microenvironments that favor their own growth while excluding potential competitors. Here on Ancient Dreams, we've journeyed through an evolutionary laboratory unlike anywhere else on Earth, where isolation has transformed the impossible into the everyday reality of survival. From lemurs that sing like whales to chameleons that paint emotions across their skin, from cave fish that navigate by heartbeat to plants that engineer their own ecosystems, Madagascar has revealed the boundless creativity of evolution when given millions of years to experiment without interference. These creatures represent more than just biological curiosities. They are living proof that life finds ways to thrive in conditions that challenge every assumption we hold about the limits of adaptation. Yet as we celebrate these evolutionary marvels, we must also acknowledge their fragility. The very isolation that created these wonders now threatens their survival in a rapidly changing world. Madagascar's biological treasures remind us that our planet still holds mysteries waiting to be discovered, evolutionary pathways that exist nowhere else in the universe. Each species lost is an entire experiment in survival that can never be replicated. The island stands as both a testament to life's infinite creativity and an urgent call to preserve the last laboratories of evolution before they disappear forever.